Hi, my name is Michelle Mwagtatia. My first memory of Wellington, while I was touring in a theatre and education team, Pacific Underground, we would stop in Wellington because we were performing here. My impressions of Wellington at that time was that it always rained all the time. Every time I was here, it would rain or it was windy. But I still liked this place, and then I ended up living here. How's that? Huh? I know. Yeah.
My name's Will, and one of my Wellington memories is from working at the world premiere of The Hobbit at the Embassy Theatre. And it was just crazy because the city was really alive and all of Courtenay Place was just completely packed full of people. And I remember going up to the roof and calling my friend who worked for the news. He was a cameraman, and I just told him to point the camera at the embassy, and I still had him on the phone. I was like, "Can you see me?" He's like, "Yep." And I just called out and waved, and then they ended up taking that as an official photo for the news. And yeah, it was just a really lively, energetic day, and I got paid to do nothing, basically. So that's one of my favourite Wellington memories. It's a shame about the movie, though.
Hi, my name's Jude, and my Wellington story relates to my involvement in the 1981 Springbok Tour demonstration. I'd not long been in Wellington, first came to Wellington in 1977 from Dunedin and into the Big Smoke, and involved in the movement that was anti the Springbok Tour. I'll never forget the main demonstration, which was at Molesworth Street, and what happened to a number of people as a result of the actions of the police that night. But anyway, I went with a couple of colleagues, friends, and got separated from them, unfortunately, after the battening of a whole lot of people during that event. And all of a sudden I found myself involved with Black Power, and I was looked after wonderfully, wonderfully well by those blokes, and they allayed all my fears. So that was a good, positive thing about Wellington, Black Power, and being in the Big Smoke.
Kia ora, my name's Diane, and my Wellington story is a memory of moving to Wellington for the first time when I was about 10 years old, coming down the Naranga Gorge into the city after travelling down from Auckland, keeping my mother awake on the journey, and coming into the harbour, going, wow, this is an amazing place. And apparently I said, what is that plague and virus on the hills? And my mother said, that's houses. No, it's just a bit strange. Yeah. So that's my Wellington story. 30 seconds. Woo!
Hi, I'm Gareth, and my Wellington story revolves around the elements, the wind around Wellington, which has just been a constant in my life. I grew up in Wellington, born and raised here, and I just remember as a teenager we lived in Miramar, and I would go when it was the most blustery day, if it was a storm, go on my bike around the Miramar Peninsula and absolutely get hammered around the airport with rain and wind, and just to kind of feel those forces, those natural forces against you was just amazing. And now I live in the centre of town, and so I do a lot of walking around the centre of town, and yeah, to feel Wellington's wind, boy, you know you're in Wellington, and when you're away from Wellington you kind of miss it. Maybe sometimes in winter you kind of think, oh no, I've had enough of this, but yeah, that's kind of my Wellington story.
My name is Kate. My story is from the very first time that I came to Wellington. I flew in from Britain via Auckland, and I can remember quite clearly it was about September 1981. I'm flying in past High Tai, the red roofs and the white weatherboards were golden in the evening light, and I was quite astonished. It was quite different to how I expected it, but also very different from the lights in Britain, so it was astounding, and I felt like I was in quite a different kind of place.
Hi, I'm Peter. I was brought up around at Eastbourne, and in those days it was all the children there. It was yachting in summer, rugby in winter, and then you had scouting, I guess, all through the year. But making the journey to, or you'd start off at Muir High School and then progress to either Hutt Valley High School or Wellington College. I went to Wellington College and there was enough children in Eastbourne. We had 2 special buses that ran everyone into Wellington. Remember one time there we got held up on the motorway and the driver took a bypass, turned off at Naranga, and to slow him down, everyone on the bus stood up and started rocking the bus. So the driver was furious about this, but those, I guess, were the days you'd go through. Oh, bugger, sorry.
My name is Leslie Lewis, and my very first Wellington memory was arriving from a long international flight, being dropped off at my new apartment, and going to sleep and waking up to find that the Sevens were going on, and there were people dressed as Smurfs, people dressed in any costume you can imagine, right outside my window, partying, and remembered thinking, this place is so weird. I woke up in the morning, good night's sleep, I realized it really is a lovely place and I enjoy it very much. And 5 years later, I'm still here, so it wasn't that traumatic.
Pētara, and my Wellington story is actually about my primary/intermediate. It's kind of 2 in 1. It's Wilton School. Now it's called Otari School. Yeah, I love that school very much, and I suppose a funny story about it is that just down the road there's this park, and it's easy to kind of stop in if you're driving, and our parents used to always drop us off there and we'd walk to school. It's about 20 metres to school. I remember we used to moan and moan. Now when we drive past it we realise how petty it was, moaning about just walking about 10 seconds down the road to go to school. So yeah, that's my story about Wellington.
Kia ora, my name's Emma, and I don't think I categorically have a favourite singular memory of Wellington, but one thing I am particularly fond of is all the mountains. I walk a hell of a lot all around this city, and I think have been to all the highest peaks in Wellington, Mount Vic, Mount Kaukau, Mount Albert, all around, and I love being up on top, in front and over the city, and looking down on it.
So it's 35 years ago. My name's Alex. I get here from Christchurch, playing on beautiful cricket pitches down there, lovely green, sort of verdant stuff. Get up here, Wellington cricket pitches are crap. They're terrible, right? Artificials everywhere. But I do belong to Bill St Pat's, so we get a couple of games during my career on the Basin Reserve itself, which is beautiful. You dive, you bounce, it's wonderful. So we actually win the game that I'm thinking of, but that night at the club rooms, which was on the Basin Reserve, the Billy Graham Crusade is setting up for their little hoopla on the green there, and the seniors, after a wee bit of imbibing, get out on the balcony and they shout out, "Pray on your knees, you Protestant B word," which means illegitimate, and we had to haul them in. But that's an enduring memory. It was wonderful.
Hi, I'm Chris, and my memory of Wellington, one of my early memories of Wellington, was shortly after I started at the Post Office headquarters building in my first job. On my 3rd day, I remember looking out of my 9th floor office and seeing a body hauled up by the police. It turns out that Mr. Carter of Carter Fountain fame had actually had a party on board his boat the night before and fallen over and drowned. Very sad memory, but his fountain lives on.
Hi, my name's David, and my Wellington story is a Wellington memory about memories. I grew up in Palmerston North, and so Wellington was always sort of the big city down the road. Later on, after that, I moved to Christchurch, and I'd always fly into and out of Wellington. And so I was really familiar with some parts of the city, but didn't get a handle of it as a whole. A few years ago, I moved to Wellington, and something I found really weird was that I could remember what it was like walking around these streets of Wellington, not really knowing where I was. And that was kind of layered up with the current memory or experience of living in Wellington and knowing how it all fits together. So these dual memories at the same time of Wellington.
Hi, I'm Ellen. I wouldn't say I have one memory, but an amalgamation of Cuba Street memories, because there's always sort of beautiful, fun, exciting, madcap, crazy things happening on Cuba Street. So things like walking down Cuba Street, seeing people at the pub with a green parrot on their shoulder while drinking their beer, jazz bands, watching dogs play in the bucket fountain, things like that. It's a not very well kept secret that I am a pole fitness practitioner outside of my day job, so I once performed a pole routine for Cuba Duper, and in typical Wellington fashion it was a very windy and very wet day, so that was a rather memorable experience because we were slipping and sliding around trying to hang upside down from our elbows and our kneecaps in terrible weather.
My name's Mark, and my Wellington story is actually someone else's story, but it's a relative of mine's story, so it is kind of my story, okay? So it's about the power plant in Evans Bay. It's no longer there, but it used to be there, and it's in all the old photos. You would have seen the smokestacks in Evans Bay. And my second cousin, used to swim there, and when they were kids, they used to swim in the outflow from the power plant that goes into Evans Bay. So every time I kind of drive past there, I kind of think of that story, and you know, I mean, freezing cold Wellington water, but being warmed up by I presume it was a coal-powered power plant. I think it was with the big smoke stack there. So that's really, yeah, that's kind of interesting, isn't it? That's my story.
Kia ora, Tanya from Wellington. My first experience here in Wellington, coming from sunny Hawke's Bay of 32 degrees, was in May 1991. We had snow, and all our gears was coming off the truck, and it was snowing. So welcome, Wellington. And that's my experience here. Kia ora.